Good morning, everyone. My name is Baha, and I was born and raised in the town of Bethlehem some 45 years ago. I'm currently on a speaking tour that started in Europe, in Poland, and then Germany, and then Luxembourg, and then Italy, Spain, and right now I'm moving from one place to place to speak about Palestine and the reality that we survived through. So the idea of this speaking tour is that try to help people understand the reality imposed on us in Palestine and how, what forms of Israeli control we are forced to survive. So I see myself all the time trying to help people cruise through like misrepresentations and misinformation that is usually spread by mainstream media, by politicians, and by a few academics to get people to think that reality in Palestine is complicated or hard to understand. The reality in Palestine is quite simple. It is as simple as this. If you are born to a Palestinian family, your rights, as you know them, are denied. Your right to freedom, your right to self-determination, your right to movement, like all are kind of, or access to food, access to education, and so on. All of those rights are kind of like denied from birth to death. If you were born to a Jewish family, your rights are granted and protected. It's as simple as this. It's a matter of birth. But it's presented in a way that make people think it is more complicated than the issue of birth. And now, in order to make people be confused about Palestine, almost every piece of information out there is intentionally misrepresented. Like, for example, the name of the space. Many people are born to believe, or made to believe, sorry, that Israel and Palestine are two separate geographies with some kind of political problem between them, like Mexico and the United States. But it's not like that. Israel and Palestine are two different words, two different names referring to the exact same geography. The map before you, um, if you show that map to a Palestinian, he will tell you this is the map of Palestine. If you show the exact same map to the Israeli ambassador, he will tell you like this is the map of Israel. This map in particular was taken off the website of the Israeli Ministry of Agriculture. So if you believe Israel and Palestine are two separate places, then any piece of information you put upon that representation will be confusing and difficult to understand by default. Uh, this is not like we're not the only place on the planet that has two different references to the same geography. Germany and Deutschland are two different words refer to the exact same geography. When people say like they have been to Israel and they went to Palestine, they sound exactly like I've been to Germany and went to Deutschland. Now, if you don't know any better, you will believe that. But like in reality, that belief is kind of confusing. The Israeli government is essentially in control of every inch of the land of Palestine. We're talking about more than 27,000 square kilometers of an area. Every inch of it is controlled by the Israeli government. To have any access to Palestine, you are required approval from Israeli authorities. It's not like you want to come visit me in Bethlehem and then there will be a Palestinian on the border welcoming you. No, if you want to come visit me in Bethlehem, you have to cross through Israeli controlled borders. If you declare to the Israelis that you are on a mission to visit Palestinians, you are risking access. Like you'll probably be denied entry and denied access to the place, which happened to a lot of my friends from around the world. What's happening in Palestine is also a process that is described in two narratives, one narrative based on belief and one narrative based on historic fact. The narratives that are both based on belief are usually good for debates, verbal activities, just like any kind of belief, if people have two different beliefs, they can debate, but they will get to nowhere. So the narratives that are usually based on belief are impossible to prove, are impossible to disprove. Yet they are the most common narratives that we have on the planet. And the narrative that is based on belief is probably something you are aware of. like 6,000 years ago, God created heaven, created Adam and Eve, and somehow God gave this piece of land to the Jewish people. And now this narrative is the most popular narrative. The other narrative, which is based on historic fact, sound like this. Back in 1897, nearly 202 Jewish nationalists met in a town called Basel in Switzerland, and from there they decided that they wanted to turn Palestine into a Jewish-only space or a Jewish homeland. So everything that we have in Palestine from 1897 up until today is kind of connected, and kind of aims at the creation and maintenance of a Jewish-only space on the land of Palestine. So if you want to do this, like you have to follow the exact same outlines of colonizers who went to other spaces around the world and claimed other people's homelands as theirs. Those people ended up committing genocide or ended up exploiting indigenous populations like the British did in India or the white man did in the south of Africa. In our case in Palestine, the aim is to remove the indigenous Palestinian population from the space and from the land. Uh, for almost 100 years, since 1919 up until today, the way authorities treated the Palestinian population is through removal and displacement. More than 66% of the entire Palestinian population was forcibly removed. And today we have 9 different policies that are maintained by the Israeli government. If you apply any of those policies on any piece of Palestine, like the result will be a Palestinian individual, Palestinian family, Palestinian village, Palestinian town, Palestinian city being destroyed. Like when you look at the pictures before you, those are pictures of the largest Palestinian city back in 1947, the city of Jaffa, home to nearly 73,000 members of Palestinian families. The place was bombed, destroyed, and the population of Jaffa was reduced to around 100 people. If you color those pictures, they will look like photos you've taken from Gaza today, or yesterday. The same kind of like violence that aims at displacement and destruction of Palestinian communities throughout Palestine. Why Gaza? Simply because Gaza is today's largest Palestinian city. So if you want to turn Palestine into a Jewish-only place, you have to remove the Palestinian population. And this is what the Palestinian population have been subject to for more than 100 years. And it's a process that continues up until today. And you could see elements of that also during the process of the genocide that was carried out by the Israeli government over the population of Gaza in the past like 470 days. Uh, Mind you, like the difference between Palestinian subjects to ethnic cleansing and displacement and other populations that were subject to the same atrocities and same crimes is that Israelis claim that Palestinians do not exist. Now, their claim that we as Palestinians don't exist is not only contradictory to historic facts, like when you believe that Palestine was a land without people, then you have to eliminate 10,000 years of a human history in the city of Jericho. You have to eliminate 4,000 years of a human history in the town of Bethlehem. What's the point of denying Palestinians' existence? The point is that if I deny the existence of the victim of my crime, I deny the crime. This is why, like many defenders, supporters, and beneficiaries of Israeli criminal behavior would start from the denial of the very existence of the Palestinian people in Palestine. Because when I deny the existence of the victim of my crime, I deny the existence of the crime. The second thing that is required to happen if you want to turn Palestine into a Jewish homeland or a Jewish only place is land itself. Now, we as Palestinian society, we are a very diverse society. We don't have much in common in terms of language, accent, faith we identify with, and so on. And even skin color and ethnicity. We are very, very diverse. And that's where the wealth of our culture comes from. It comes from our diversity. Yet, we have one thing in common, which is that we are all born to families that were robbed completely or partially of their land, property, inheritance, and homes. And that is a process that has been legalized by the Israeli government since 1949. How does the state of Israel rob Palestinian families of their inheritance? They simply make your life on your family's property dangerous, which means that you would be risking your life to be executed and murdered. You will be risking your life of being arrested or deported. All those practices are carried out by the Israeli government up until today. The third step required for turning Palestine into a Jewish-only place is that you want to import Jewish people from all over the world to come and live permanently on the land of Palestine. The Israeli government claims to be a Jewish state, yet they do not have a definition for who's Jewish and who's not. And the reason for the lack of that definition is that they can be selective. They want to be selective. So anybody who identifies with Jewish faith and examines Israel's atrocities towards Palestinians through Jewish principles and commandments and so on, like thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not steal, or he who destroys one life is as evil as if he destroys the whole world. When you examine the conduct of the Israeli government through Jewish principles, you will see that the Israeli government is violating Jewish principles, in their mistreatment of the Palestinian people. So if you look at it in this way, if you are born to a Jewish family and you ended up believing in equality, justice, a criminalization of wrongdoings, then you are the wrong Jewish person for the state of Israel. You will not be allowed access. But if you have tolerance to the criminal behavior towards Palestinians, if you have tolerance to Israeli oppression, you are willing to support it, benefit from it, and so on, then you are the correct Jewish person for the state of Israel. So those three processes of ongoing displacement of the indigenous Palestinian population, of ongoing robbery of the inheritance of Palestinian families, of ongoing replacement of the Palestinian population with selected kind of Jewish Israelis, you know, that is kind of the context, like in order to turn Palestine into a Jewish only place. So if you want to understand anything that has been going on the land of Palestine for nearly 100 years, you have to recognize those three processes in order to have a clear understanding. Now, if you are born to a Palestinian family, you are on the victim end of this process, and that's just by birth. If you are born to a Jewish family, you are on the beneficiary side of that process. You know, it doesn't matter if you like it or you hate it, you are proud of it or you are ashamed of it. These are the three processes that have been going on the land of Palestine. You've heard of Israeli settlements on the land of Palestine, right? I'll tell you like how those three processes exist in every single household of any of the 193 Israeli settlements we have in the territory of the occupied West Bank. The Swiss cottages you see on the photo of the south of Bethlehem, how did the state of Israel manage to build those things, settlements? They removed the Palestinian families off their land. They stole the land and they built housing units to replace the Palestinian population with selected kind of people, you know? And that process happens in almost every single household you see in this Swiss neighborhood. And now, while the entire world was invited to debate Israeli settlements and see how legal or illegal they are, how they are, a violation of international law and so on, the state of Israel on the ground was not engaging in that debate. They were engaging in a process of removal of Palestinians, stealing their land, and replacing the Palestinian population with a preferred kind of population. In the case of the state of Israel, Jewish Israelis. So, in every aspect of the life of Palestine, those are the three processes that the Israeli government have been creating and maintaining over the past 70 plus years. Now, to make things even more complicated and more confusing for outsiders, the state of Israel have invented like a mess of laws. Um, like you probably understand or know that the state of Israel does not have a constitution, right? The reason they don't have a constitution is because why to have one legal system while we can have five legal systems? So on those 27,000 square kilometers, the Israeli government applies not one, not two, but five different legal systems applied on the population under Israel's control. One of those legal systems is applied on you if you are born to a Jewish family. The other four are enforced upon you if you were born to a Palestinian family. And those four systems are separate and different. This map shows a little bit of those four systems. Uh, this map was taken off the website of the Israeli Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and you probably see a term like no data, which is one of those lies. The State of Israel has data on each and every inch of the land of Palestine, but sometimes they like to share information. Most of the time, they will never share information that will expose them as a criminal regime. The first set of rules applied on Palestinians is what the so-called Israeli Arabs are forced to survive through. Those are Palestinians who were subject to Israeli military rule from 1949 to 1966. They make up nearly 10% of the entire Palestinian population, and they are called by the State of Israel Israeli Arabs, not Palestinians or Arab Israelis. So they are there as people who do not kind of belong. There are about 65 Israeli civil laws that are imposed upon the so-called Israeli Arabs or the Palestinian survivors of the ethnic cleansing of Palestine that was carried out in 1947, 48, and 49. And those 65 laws are sometimes discriminatory in language and practice. In other situations, they are beautiful in language, discriminatory in practice. Um, there are many organizations that exposed those 65 laws that you can also read about them. But that's just one of the four set of rules applied on Palestinians. The second set of rules is applied on Palestinians who are surviving within the Israeli boundaries of Jerusalem. The black lines you see on this map are about an area of 73 square kilometers. Uh, there are about 450,000 Palestinians who live there. So the Palestinians in Jerusalem are not mistreated the same way as the so-called Israeli Arabs. They are not mistreated like Palestinians in Nazareth. They are referred to as permanent residents of Jerusalem. And there's nothing permanent about Palestinians in Jerusalem other than the word and the title. Because if you've been paying attention to the Palestinians within those boundaries, there are many Palestinians who are expelled completely from this area, and there are Palestinians who are being expelled slowly, one by one, family by family, house by house. The State of Israel got away with destroying more than 17,600 homes for Palestinians in Jerusalem since they occupied the city. And the process in Jerusalem is once again removal of Palestinians, confiscation of their inheritance and property, and replacing Palestinians with Jewish Israelis. The third system is one of the most complicated systems. It's applied upon Palestinians in the occupied West Bank of River Jordan. The 3.3 million Palestinians who live within that territory are subject to Israeli military rule. The 800,000 Jewish Israelis who live in that territory, they are subject to Israeli civil law. Israeli military rule is made of more than 1,600 military orders. That's the rule that I, together with nearly 3.3 million Palestinians, are forced to survive through. Israeli military orders are there are more orders than the mind of an Israeli soldier can take. Yet, if I, as a Palestinian, would break any of those military orders at the age of 14, I will be arrested, I will be sent to a military court, I will be sentenced, and I will by an Israeli military judge, and I will be sent to prison. That process was carried out more than 1 million times in Israeli military courts. More than 40% of the male Palestinian population have been sentenced at least once in their life in those military courts. Yet the reality in the occupied West Bank is also made complicated because we have a Palestinian president, we have Palestinian government, we have Palestinian police, but it doesn't get in people's minds that all of this exists under Israeli military rule. You know, it's like we have Palestinians who are allowed to rule over Palestinians under domination of the Israeli army in the exact same way like many occupied or oppressed populations will develop some kind of leadership under domination of foreign powers. Most recently, you had like people in Afghanistan, like Afghanis ruling over Afghanis under domination of American control in there. When American control left Afghanistan, the entire system of Afghanistan collapsed. So we have Palestinians who are ruling over Palestinians under domination of the State of Israel and under Israeli military rule. Ones that like they are only relevant to the reality of oppression that Palestinians in the West Bank are forced to live through. In the occupied West Bank, we don't live together. We live in nearly 130 divided uh, communities, cities, and towns. In our cities, we have Palestinian police. Palestinian police is allowed to do whatever police does in your communities, except for one thing, which is providing a protection for Palestinian civilians from the Israeli army. Nobody is allowed to provide Palestinians with protection from the Israeli army. Um, why did Palestinians accept this kind of a system? They accepted this kind of a system simply because of the peace process, where the city centers will be areas A, the villages like the brown areas or the orange areas on the map will be areas B, and the rest will be area C. Area A, B, and C would become the state of Palestine in the year 1999, something that was never ever fulfilled by the Israeli government. So right now we are divided by like we have a 700 kilometers wall, we have 1,200 miles of Israeli highways to maintain separation of Palestinians from each other. We have about 700 Israeli checkpoints scattered throughout the occupied West Bank. Like, for example, if our president was to come from the city of Ramallah to visit Bethlehem, he has to come on Israeli military checkpoints. It's down to the Israeli soldier in the checkpoint to allow our president to pass or not to pass. What does that mean? It means that any Israeli soldier has superior authority in Palestine than the authority of the president of Palestine. So it's a very confusing reality that also adds up to preventing people from understanding reality the way it is. The fourth system is the worst of all of them. It's applied on Palestinian, 2.2 million Palestinians who are surviving on an ongoing genocide. There is a ceasefire that was practiced or should be in place today and will last for 42 days. And it's just like the state of Israel needs to have some kind of a break from its ongoing genocide. The ceasefire you are hearing about is the same exact ceasefire that the state of Israel refused to implement 13 months ago because they needed to spend 13 months into butchering more and more Palestinians and destroying more than 70% of their residential homes. Now, the reality in Gaza has not been evil only in the past 470 days. The Gaza Strip was created to host families that were expelled from 240 Palestinian communities. Founders of the State of Israel prevented those families from going back to their communities since then. And instead of allowing them back, no, in 1967, the State of Israel followed them into Gaza and have been subjecting them to an Israeli military rule. That Israeli military rule was changed in 2005 into something worse. The Israeli government decided to recognize Gaza as a hostile entity, right? What's the difference between military rule and hostile entity? Under military rule, you are a target, a legal target for Israeli authorities at the age of 14. As a resident of hostile entity, you are a legal target the day you are born. That's the main difference. That's why Israeli criminals actually legalized murder of more than 17,000 like minors over the past 470 days. They legalized the destruction of people's homes because everything in Gaza is turned into some kind of a legal target for Israeli criminals. So we have those four systems. Of course, the problem in Gaza is not Israel's denial of people access to water. Like 97% of the water resources in Gaza were contaminated pre-October of 2023. Their food supplies were in control and counted based on the calories. 24% of the land of Gaza was under direct Israeli military control. 75% of the territorial water was off access for Palestinians in Gaza. If you lived in Gaza pre-October of 2023, then uh, you would receive 4 hours of electricity every day in a winter day, 6 hours in a summer day. And the population in Gaza have been always persecuted and murdered for rejecting the rule of the exact same regime that robbed them of everything. So one thing people don't want to see, which is that the families in Gaza, more than 75% of the families of Gaza, are families that were robbed completely of everything by the Israeli regime. So when the Israeli regime controls them, the natural thing is to express rejection to the regime that robbed you and your family of everything. But doesn't seem like any of Israeli criminal behavior towards Palestinians in Gaza has been problematic. What's the problem? The problem is Palestinians' violence. The Islamic resistance movement is promoted as the problem in Gaza. You know? So what the state of Israel wants in Gaza is this: subject people to like inhuman, brutal mistreatment and expect Palestinians to take it, and 100% of them have to be submissive to Israeli criminal behavior. If anybody tries to express their rejection in any means necessary, then the state of Israel will destroy them and kill them more. I don't know where anybody or like would stand from the so-called Islamic resistance movement because it's promoted as the problem in Gaza. And I don't have any problem with people like believing whatever they want to believe. In order to believe that the problem in Gaza is the Islamic resistance movement, we have to also believe that everything between 1949 and 1988 was perfect for Palestinians in Gaza, and then the Islamic resistance movement came in and blew up the party. The Islamic resistance movement is clearly an outcome of 40 years of Israeli oppression rather than the reason for Israeli oppression. But once again, just like in any other situation of oppression, the oppressed are always blamed for the savagery of their oppressors all the time. You know, the problem under apartheid South Africa was not the savagery of the apartheid regime. The problem was the violence of Nelson Mandela's party, the ANC. And you can apply that game in every situation of oppression to see the exact same thing. So, like, Palestinians are blamed for not being perfect, victims, not being submissive enough to Israeli criminal behavior. So if you want to understand, like, at least why it's complicated, it is complicated because the misrepresentation of what's happening in Palestine is the name of the game. You don't understand that Palestinians are subject to four Israeli military rules. Through those four Israeli military rules, the Israeli government creates a situation of domination of those who were born to Jewish families over those who were born to Palestinian families. The reality in Palestine is that the state of Israel have created not one, but four systems of domination of those who were born to Jewish families over those who were born to Palestinian families. And that's, in a sense, the basics for another crime against the humanity. So we have three crimes against the humanity: crime of genocide. The state of Israel is getting away with it for the second time in 76 years of history. Crime of ethnic cleansing. The state of Israel have been getting away with committing that crime since 1948. And the third crime against the humanity is the crime of apartheid. The crime of apartheid is a crime that takes place when the regime in control creates a system of domination of one group of people over the other for the reason of race, ethnicity, faith, or language. The State of Israel takes the element of faith, turns it into a genetic marker, and then uses it as the bedrock or the base for its apartheid regimes. Many defenders, supporters, beneficiaries of Israeli criminal behavior say that Israel does not have an apartheid regime, and that's 100% correct because the State of Israel have been busy maintaining four different systems of apartheid on the land of Palestine, the subject of which is anybody born to a Palestinian family. So if you think that the reality in Palestine is kind of confusing or difficult, please understand that this is by design. It has nothing to do with your inability to understand or your inability to see the reality the way it is. It's just like a mess that we as Palestinians are forced to survive through day in, day out of our lives. Whatever it is we do between our birth and death is really irrelevant to those legal systems. We can love it, we can hate it, we can submit to it, we can fight it. In the end of the day, those are the systems that the State of Israel have always been empowered to maintain on the land of Palestine. So I'll stop here in order to leave room for questions. Thank you all for listening.